I'm Aylin Long, 28, a private practice dentist in Nashville. This dress, custom silk, perfect fit, was my triumph. I was standing in a beam of light, the picture of precision, ready for my dream wedding. The smile was real. Then the phone buzzed, shattering the silence. A text from my mother, Eleanor, stark and cold. "You're officially out of the bridesmaid list, sweetie. Focus on your perfect clinic instead." My smile didn't just fade, it dropped. The room went quiet, like my childhood memories of family exclusion. My own mother was cutting me out of her wedding and using my professional success as the weapon. But why? What kind of family uses perfection as a tool of rejection? And what was the strategy one would use to finally escape their poisonous dynamics? My own mother was cutting me out of her wedding and using my professional success as the weapon. But why? What kind of family uses perfection as a tool of rejection? And what was the strategy one would use to finally escape their poisonous dynamics? I built my own world in Nashville. My private dental clinic, located in a high-end district, is my fortress of precision. Patients don't just respect my skill, they adore my empathy and thoroughness. That clinic, my asset, was proof of my determination. My fiancé, Ethan Miller, a tech executive, sees my perfection as a strength. He admires my discipline. He's the first real connection in my life who gives approval without conditions. He validates the power I built, rather than dismissing it as a flaw. Yet every family gathering, every short call, ended with the same mocking dynamics. Dr. Long, the woman who disinfects love. The joke stung, reinforcing that no triumph or solvency could ever earn their approval. My smile was polite, but the pain lingered. They rejected my life's work, but I was about to give them the ultimate chance to finally see me, by announcing my engagement. Would this final step toward adult self-determination finally bridge the gap, or would their judgment simply intensify the poisonous dynamics? I showed them the ring, a diamond as precise as my dental work. I was genuinely happy, hoping this triumph, my engagement to Ethan, would finally earn their genuine approval. I laid out my strategy for the future. The silence after my announcement wasn't congratulatory, it was heavy. Eleanor spoke first, bypassing the congratulations entirely. "Let's keep it traditional, our old church would be perfect, Aylin. Don't make it too fancy. Remember your roots." Instead of connection, I heard immediate control. Their strategy was clear: my life, my success, was still theirs to manage under the guise of practicality. This wasn't about a church, it was about the dynamics of power. If they couldn't celebrate my joy, what new level of superiority would they unleash when they visited my Nashville home and saw the full asset of my independent life? They finally visited Nashville. Their eyes didn't see my hard-won solvency or my commitment to precision, they saw my life as a stage for judgment. My apartment, which reflected my disciplined skill, was immediately dismissed. Robert muttered, "No warmth, no soul, like a lab." Then Eleanor performed the classic family dynamic of ridicule. She wiped her hands after touching my pristine marble counter. "You really live like this, Aylin? So sterile." I smiled politely, enduring the verbal sting, but inside, I felt small again, confirming their superiority. They had successfully belittled my success in my own fortress. But how many times can one person offer an olive branch before their desire for connection breaks? And what was the ultimate strategy one would use to force them to see my worth? Even after the sterile comment, I didn't give up. I tried to involve them in the wedding planning, thinking that shared practicality might bridge the dynamics. I meticulously researched and sent venue ideas, churches, local halls, nothing too fancy. This wasn't my dream strategy, it was my final attempt at connection. No replies came. Just a single message from Eleanor, cutting and definitive: "Don't waste money on those places. You're already sterile enough. Just sign the papers." They weaponized the very word they used to dismiss my skill. My financial solvency, my entire triumph, was meaningless compared to their superiority. That message was the final, stinging rejection of my attempt at connection. How do you move past the pain of lifelong exclusion? And what radical act of self-determination would finally allow me to build a boundary around my own joy? That night, after reading the sterile enough text, the polite smile finally broke. I scrolled through old family photos, searching for a single image of genuine approval, a single moment of real connection. All I saw were the old dynamics, me, standing slightly apart, trying to earn my place with my precision. The quiet despair was overwhelming. Ethan found me there. He didn't ask what was wrong, he just sat beside me. I finally voiced the core pain. They never saw who I was. They only saw a threat to their small-town practicality, an arrogant challenge to their superiority. My triumph, my skill, my asset, had only deepened their rejection. Ethan replied gently, offering the only path forward: then build a new family, with people who do see you. You have the power, Aylin. Use your determination to create a boundary around your happiness. Make your own rules for your wedding. That is your ultimate self-determination. His words were the seed of my ultimate strategy. Ethan was right. My wedding had to become the definitive statement of my self-determination, not a negotiation for their approval. But how does a dentist who values precision plan a destination wedding that is both a flawless celebration of love and the perfect, undeniable act of family revenge? I stopped negotiating. My strategy shifted from seeking approval to asserting my self-determination. I used my financial solvency, my hard-earned asset, to make a definitive choice. I booked a luxurious Caribbean resort for a private, destination wedding. Every detail was an act of rebellion disguised as precision. The timing, the floral design, the ceremony arch, everything reflected the high standards my family had mocked as sterile. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a demonstration of my skill, my power, and my integrity. I looked at the resort photos, the turquoise water reflecting the endless sky. I whispered to Ethan, if they call it sterile, fine. Perfection is my language. My lifelong pursuit of triumph and perfection finally served my emotional needs, creating a boundary they couldn't cross. The decision was made. The deposit was sent. But what would Eleanor's dynamics look like when she realized I had used the asset of my despised success to plan a wedding designed entirely outside her control, and how quickly would the family gossip spread? Eleanor called, fury vibrating through the phone line. She launched into the classic family dynamic of emotional guilt. You are embarrassing us with this rich girl act, Aylin. A destination wedding? You've forgotten where you came from. You're showing off your solvency like it's a virtue. This time, I didn't apologize or try to seek approval. My strategy was clear: turn my asset, the clinic, into my defense. My voice was steady, a reflection of my professional precision. I worked for this, Mom. Every crown, every late-night emergency, my skill and determination paid for it. Eleanor escalated the old superiority. We just want what's best, something simple and practical. I replied, calmly setting a final boundary. What's best for me is defined by my own self-determination, not your comfort. I don't owe anyone my joy. I ended the call, asserting my right to my own triumph. I had shut down their direct control. The battle for my wedding was now a battle of information. How did I manage the final chaotic weeks, balancing my precision dental practice with my ultimate act of self-determination? And what was the final straw that led me to remove them from the guest list entirely? The clinic was undergoing an expansion, a large-scale demonstration of my financial solvency and determination. Meanwhile, I confirmed the menu, choosing items that were delicate, refined, and entirely outside my parents' definition of practicality. Every choice was a silent, peaceful assertion of my independence. I checked patient files one last time before leaving, ensuring the team had a flawless handover. My integrity was non-negotiable. Later that day, Ethan and I rehearsed our vows on a video call with the officiant, meticulously timing the reading with the sunset. The precision was key. My team, my chosen family, supported this triumph. My assistant framed a small note on my desk: "Perfection takes you places." This new connection celebrated my skill instead of dismissing it. The true power lies not in how much you control, but in who you allow to witness your joy. I closed my clinic door one last time before the flight. I was physically exhausted, but emotionally solvent. I whispered to the empty office, "This is who I am, professional and personal perfection." I didn't need their approval anymore. I had accepted my own truth. I knew that while I was planning a flawless wedding, the family gossip back home was reaching a fever pitch. Their superiority would fuel their criticism. But my wedding was protected by a mental boundary as strong as the security at the resort. Their negative dynamics no longer had the power to touch me. I had created my own flawless, independent world. But when the inevitable gossip reached a toxic peak, and my family used public platforms to amplify their superiority, would I finally break, or would I use the silence of my own power to cut the final cord? I had set my boundary, but the old family dynamics always seek a public stage. The gossip started with the aunts and uncles, fueled by my parents' wounded superiority. The narrative was simple: I was an arrogant asset who had abandoned the family's simple practicality for ostentatious success. I would hear comments filtered through my brother Lucas, their subtle strategy to break my determination. "She thinks she's better than us, all that money and still no real connection." They dismissed my skill and solvency as mere luck, refusing to acknowledge the precision and hard work behind my triumph. The ultimate escalation came on social media. Eleanor posted a cryptic message, heavy with moral superiority: "Some daughters forget where they come from. We raised her to value people, not things." It was a direct, public attack, a final attempt to invoke family power and widespread approval against my self-determination. I read the comments, the immediate judgment from relatives who had never even visited my clinic. My initial reaction was a flash of the old pain, the urge to defend my integrity. But then the exhaustion hit, a profound weariness of constantly fighting the same losing battle for their acceptance. Instead of replying, I closed the app. My ultimate strategy was silence. My peace was too valuable to trade for their temporary approval. I had secured my financial asset, now I needed to secure my emotional boundary. My wedding wasn't for them to judge, it was for me to celebrate. This public display of superiority was the final confirmation that my family was addicted to their own narrative of moral victimhood. They had crossed a line. There was only one final, clean step of self-determination left to take, a surgical act of separation to protect my peace and ensure my triumph. Their public judgment had pushed me to the edge. I had the power to cut the cord entirely, but would I send the final, devastating message of exclusion, or would I simply choose silence over their toxic dynamics? The public gossip was the confirmation I needed. My family wasn't just rejecting my lifestyle, they were actively trying to sabotage my triumph using moral superiority. I realized that for my wedding to truly be a celebration of my self-determination, they couldn't be there to poison the air with their old dynamics. The decision itself was clinical, a reflection of the precision I use in my dental practice. I sat down with Ethan to review the guest list. I didn't announce my final strategy to anyone, I simply and quietly removed my parents, my aunts, and uncles. It was a surgical detachment, clean and necessary. The finality brought a strange peace, a release from the lifelong burden of seeking their approval. I looked at Ethan, who held my hand. Love shouldn't beg, I told him. My power was finally defined by what I chose to keep out of my life, not what I desperately tried to pull in. I realized my true asset wasn't just my financial solvency or my skill, it was my emotional integrity. I wouldn't compromise the atmosphere of my sacred day just to adhere to outdated notions of family practicality. My perfect, Caribbean wedding was no longer revenge, it was self-preservation. We updated the list, a select group of friends and colleagues who genuinely celebrated our journey. People who valued determination over approval, precision over chaos, and connection built on respect. We would marry surrounded by those who celebrated, not merely tolerated, our success. This final boundary would undoubtedly cause profound pain for them, but their despair was a byproduct of their own refusal to evolve. My responsibility wasn't to manage their feelings about my triumph, it was to protect my own joy and self-determination from their toxic dynamics. The hardest part was accepting that this surgical cut, though painful, was an act of high integrity. It was the only strategy left to reclaim my narrative. My wedding was no longer a hope for approval, it was the ultimate, flawless expression of my own power. I had surgically removed the source of my pain. The wedding was now protected. But 3 days before the ceremony, my mother made one final, desperate move, a financial guilt trap designed to appeal to my practicality. Would this ultimate test of my determination break my boundary? 3 days before the wedding. I was on the resort veranda, feeling the quiet triumph of my self-determination. The air was clean, my mental boundary was strong. Then my phone rang, Eleanor. I almost ignored it, but my internal strategy told me to face the final attack head-on. Her voice was low, calculated, the classic family dynamic of emotional manipulation. She didn't mention the wedding, she went straight for my practicality and connection. Your father needs a costly dental procedure, Aylin. Very expensive. And Lucas's tuition is due. She knew my lifelong pain was rooted in family loyalty and the desire to be their helpful asset. This was a financial guilt trap, a final test of my determination. She escalated the despair. Maybe you can delay your expensive little party and help your family instead. Show us your integrity. I took a deep breath. My response was entirely professional, reflecting my skill and precision. I detached myself from the daughter and stepped into the role of Dr. Long, the successful, financially solvent executive. I spoke clearly, no anger, no pain, pure power. The wedding is paid for, Mom. In full. By that same just a dentist job you dismissed. I used her own past insults, transforming my success into my sharpest weapon. My voice didn't waver. The silence on her end was the first sign of my final triumph over her superiority. She tried to regain control, reverting to the need for approval, but Aylin, we're family. We need your help. Your integrity is at stake. This was the final toxic gaslighting. I was done seeking her connection through sacrifice. My self-determination was non-negotiable. I don't owe anyone my joy. I let the weight of that statement hang between us, a clear, impenetrable boundary. The only thing left to do was to cut the cord. I didn't wait for her next emotional strategy, I simply pressed the end call button. A clean cut, precise as a dental procedure. I stood there, phone in hand. It wasn't an act of revenge, it was an act of complete self-determination. I had used my despised asset to buy my freedom. Their power over me, fueled by guilt and the promise of connection, was officially dissolved. The climax was over, and I had won. The surgical cut was successful, the triumph was mine. But what kind of peace does one find after such a final, definitive rejection of the past, and how flawlessly would the wedding unfold without the shadow of their superiority? The surgical cut was complete. My hands were shaking slightly, but my mind felt profoundly calm. The silence of the resort, usually just tranquil, now felt like a vast, protective boundary of my own making. My lifelong commitment to precision had paid off, not just in my asset, but in my strategy for life itself. Ethan found me and simply pulled me into a hug. He didn't need details, he understood the finality of the dynamic change. I used my money to buy my peace, I admitted. My financial solvency wasn't just bank statements, it was emotional armor against their attempts at superiority. My wedding, scheduled for 2 days later, was no longer about showing off my success or seeking their grudging approval. It was a pure, unadulterated celebration of my self-determination and the strength of my new connection with Ethan. This was the ultimate triumph, a life lived on my terms. I had worried my ambition and skill made me sterile. Now, I recognized that my integrity was built on the discipline they had scorned. My determination allowed me to create an asset of a life that was both beautiful and fiercely independent. Every memory of their painful judgment had served a purpose, building the quiet power that allowed me to press the end call button without regret. The emotional despair they had tried to inflict was instead absorbed and used as fuel for my final, perfect escape strategy. The only practicality I cared about now was the flawless execution of my wedding. I smiled, looking at the meticulous seating chart. The only people who needed to be there were the people who saw me, Dr. Aylin Long, the woman of precision, not the family's perpetual disappointment. The final message was clear: my life, my rules. I had established a permanent boundary against their toxic dynamics. No future invitation. No financial plea, no moral superiority would ever pierce the shield of my self-determination again. My past was finally cut loose. My triumph was secured, and the stage was set. How perfectly did my Caribbean wedding, a monument to precision and self-determination, look, and what final, satisfying act of silent power did I use to close the book on their toxic dynamics forever? The day was flawless. Every detail, from the white orchids timed to bloom perfectly to the music swelling precisely as the sun touched the horizon, was a testament to my professional precision and determination. This wasn't just a party, it was a physical manifestation of my integrity and high standards. There was no lingering pain, no fear of their judgment. I walked down the aisle, feeling the full power of my self-determination. Every smile I exchanged with Ethan, every word of our vows, was a pure, uncompromised act of connection. This was my life's ultimate triumph, built solely on my skill and asset. The guests, my chosen family, my supportive colleagues, only offered approval and celebration. No one mentioned practicality or my family's superiority. My protective boundary was holding perfectly. The old toxic dynamics felt a million miles away, dissolved by the turquoise water and the soft glow of the lanterns. During the reception, Ethan gave a toast, and every word confirmed my new life strategy. Aylin is the most dedicated person I know. Her precision isn't a flaw, it's her greatest gift. She uses that determination to build a perfect life for us, piece by piece. His words were the self-determination manifesto I had always needed. I danced with my husband, fully present, fully solvent, financially and emotionally. The cost of the wedding, an expression of my financial asset, was irrelevant compared to the feeling of finally being free from the lifelong despair of familial expectation. I looked out at the ocean. The people who called me sterile were not here. Their absence wasn't painful, it was necessary. Their practicality was a prison of low expectations. My success was my liberation. I had chosen integrity over their manufactured family narrative. The revenge wasn't the luxurious cost, it was the sheer, visible, undeniable perfection of the day. It was the fact that I had engineered my own happiness with the same careful skill they had belittled. My final act of power was the quiet, confident knowledge that they were missing something they could never afford, my genuine joy. The wedding ended, a final, perfect punctuation mark on my past. I was Dr. Aylin Long, self-determined, solvent, and free. The surgical cut was successful, the triumph was mine. But what was the final, non-verbal message I sent back home? A precise demonstration of my new life that ensured their toxic dynamics could never reach me again. The wedding was a triumph of precision. I was on my honeymoon, watching the tide roll in, yet my analytic mind, the skill of Dr. Long, needed to observe the final seismic event back home. I knew my absence would provoke their most vicious dynamics. Ethan handed me my phone. The family group chat was a dumpster fire. My sister, Clara, had screenshots of Eleanor's public posts about moral failure. The gossip was relentless, condemning my asset as frivolous and my self-determination as spiteful. My parents' defense was predictable, claiming they couldn't afford the trip, despite my offer to pay for their flights, amplifying their moral superiority over my financial solvency. They twisted my lifelong determination and skill into selfishness and vanity. My final strategy wasn't a word, it was an image. I had one perfect, high-resolution photo from the wedding. It showed Ethan and me, mid-vow, framed by the perfect sunset, the resort's private beach empty save for our small, loving group. I uploaded the photo to my professional clinic page, the very asset they had mocked as just a dentist. The caption was clinical and undeniable, a final assertion of my self-determination. It was designed to pierce their narrative of pain and victimhood. The caption read, "Dr. Aylin Long is happy to announce her marriage." The wedding was managed with the same precision and integrity with which we manage your dental care. A pure celebration of connection and success. No mention of family, no defense needed. Pure power. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of congratulatory messages flooded in from clients, colleagues, and friends, praising my skill and the stunning event. Their massive approval drowned out the tiny echo of family gossip. The dynamic had reversed. The most satisfying part was knowing that my parents, who monitored my professional page constantly, saw the validation of the life they had called sterile. My triumph was public, undeniable, and paid for with my own despised asset. That image was the final, perfect act of revenge. I closed the laptop, a final, physical affirmation of my boundary. Their gossip and superiority had failed. They had lost their power because I had stopped seeking their connection. I didn't just win the fight, I changed the arena entirely. My life was no longer about proving my solvency to them, but about enjoying the rewards of my determination. I had used my resources not for practicality defined by others, but for the beauty and joy defined by my own integrity. I knew their despair would deepen when they saw the public approval. They couldn't dismiss the wedding as a private excess, it was now a public spectacle of my success. That was the true price of their attempt to sabotage my self-determination. My strategy had worked perfectly. By refusing to engage in their old dynamics, I stripped them of the attention and validation they craved. The last piece of my old life, the constant quest for their approval, was officially retired. I picked up a smooth white stone from the beach, cool and clean. It was as precise and flawless as my diamond, as my dental work, as my wedding. It was my reminder, the only one who needed to approve of my life was the woman I saw in the mirror. The final triumph was the total silence from the family, a silence I had purchased with my asset and enforced with my self-determination. But what happened when I returned home to my expanded, successful clinic, and how did I ensure that the boundary I created remained solid forever? Returning to Nashville didn't feel like coming home, it felt like claiming my territory. I walked through the airport, not as the daughter perpetually seeking approval, but as Dr. Aylin Long, a woman of unshakable self-determination. My marital triumph was now a quiet strength, a permanent boundary against the old toxic dynamics. My first stop was the clinic. The expansion was complete, my professional asset was bigger, cleaner, and more efficient than ever. I ran my hand over the stainless steel of the new surgery suite. This space, a monument to my skill and determination, was the purest form of practicality and integrity I knew. I settled back into my routine with an effortless ease born of emotional solvency. The chaos of the wedding drama, the family's gossip and moral superiority, faded into the background. My focus was on precision and patient care, the areas of life where my power was absolute and undeniable. Ethan and I discussed the future, consciously avoiding the subject of my family. Our unspoken strategy was simple: reinforce the connection with our new, healthy life and let the past atrophy. The despair of their final guilt trip attempt was the last echo I allowed myself to hear. I had won the war, but the question remained: what does a definitive family boundary look like in the small town of Nashville? And how did I handle the inevitable, final attempt by my mother to re-establish a toxic dynamic? I sat in my clinic late one night, surrounded by the tangible asset of my success. I was safe within my boundary. The distance allowed me to look at the family dynamics with a new precision, free from the old pain. My mother's moral superiority wasn't malice, it was her own deep-seated despair. My financial solvency, my biggest asset, was no longer a tool for their approval or a weapon against their judgment. It was simply a resource, earned through relentless determination and skill. It represented my freedom and my ultimate act of self-determination. My wedding triumph wasn't about revenge, it was about protecting my integrity. The real power wasn't the luxurious expense, but the flawless practicality of executing a perfect event, without the chaos of their expectations. It was a victory of competence over their toxic connection. The memory of their public gossip on social media no longer sparked pain. It simply provided clarity. Their attempt to gain public approval by invoking moral superiority only served to solidify my need for a total boundary. They had inadvertently accelerated my liberation strategy. My current triumph is the quiet certainty that my life is aligned. I no longer feel the need to argue or defend my choices. The lack of family connection is not a hole, but an open space for true connection with Ethan and my chosen tribe. I finally understand that seeking their approval was the source of my greatest despair. Once I recognized my own value and my capacity for precision and skill, their judgment became irrelevant. I was the architect of my own happiness, and that structure was faultless. My long-term strategy involves continuous growth of my asset and my family life, ensuring the boundary remains impenetrable. The freedom purchased by my solvency is not a one-time thing. It requires daily determination and conscious reinforcement of my self-determination. I picked up a dental tool, a small, gleaming piece of metal. It required perfect precision. That was the metaphor for my life. Every action, every choice, had to be surgically clean. No messy dynamics, no compromises on integrity, only the highest standards of practicality and skill. The realization hit me fully. The concept of family based on obligation and manufactured pain had been replaced by a genuine connection based on respect, love, and mutual approval. I built my own tribe, one that celebrated my success, not tried to diminish it. Their superiority was always a shield against their own failure to achieve my level of success. They needed to believe I was morally corrupt to justify their financial despair. Understanding this fundamental dynamic was the final, quiet victory. I didn't need to fight, I just needed to exist beautifully. I took the white stone from my honeymoon and placed it on my desk, next to my diploma, my symbols of self-determination and triumph. I wrote down 3 phrases: my new professional and personal manifesto: precision, integrity, peace. This reflection was necessary to ensure the boundary was not just external, but internal. I had healed the wound. The story of my life was no longer defined by the attempts to earn approval, but by the unwavering determination to be fully me. I had found my peace, sealed by my triumph and my professional asset. The family was silent, but how long would that silence last, and what final, surgical move did I take to ensure their toxic gossip and judgment could never touch my integrity again? My triumph was the peace I earned. But what was the exact content of the final, surgical letter I sent to my mother, a document of total self-determination that severed the toxic connection forever? My purpose was now distilled to its purest form, precision in every action. I was preparing for a complex surgical procedure, and the focus required was absolute. This wasn't just my job, it was the ultimate application of my skill, built on my determination and integrity. I reviewed the patient's files, an action of total practicality that held no space for the old, toxic family dynamics. My clinic, my asset, was the physical space where my power was uncontested. My financial solvency was simply the result of this unwavering commitment to excellence. I no longer sought approval. My self-determination was the single, unshakable rule. The wedding was my personal triumph, the clinic was my professional one. Both were defined by the clear boundary I had set against external judgment and gossip. The emotional despair that characterized my past was gone, replaced by a cool clarity of purpose. I wasn't driven by pain or the need for revenge. I was driven by the desire to live a life of high-level integrity and precision. That was the ultimate gift of my final break. The family was silent, a silence louder than any gossip. But silence is a vacuum, and toxic dynamics always seek to fill the void. I knew I needed one final, undeniable act, a document of permanent detachment to secure my triumph forever. My purpose was clear, my determination absolute. What was the exact, surgical content of the final letter I wrote, a document that used professional precision to sever the toxic connection and solidify my self-determination forever? The surgery was a flawless execution of precision and skill. As I removed my surgical gloves, I felt a deep, quiet satisfaction that had nothing to do with my family. I realized that the ultimate triumph wasn't the wedding, the wealth, or the public approval, it was this profound, self-contained peace. The desire for active revenge, to see their despair or confirm their pain, had dissolved. That impulse was merely the last gasp of the old, toxic dynamics seeking a reaction. My long-term strategy was not to punish them, but to live so well that their judgment became totally irrelevant. My true power lay in my integrity and determination. I was finally whole, emotionally solvent, and free from the lifelong quest for their approval. My professional asset and my marital connection were simply the beautiful evidence of my self-determination. The only practicality that mattered was maintaining the impenetrable boundary. I had achieved separation not by making a scene, but by being impeccably precise and competent. My skill had built a moat of success around my new life, fortified against their moral superiority and gossip. Their judgment was simply chatter. I had neutralized their power by removing the source of their leverage, my need for them. The pain was replaced by a final, complete feeling of closure. The story wasn't about the toxic family, it was about the architect who redesigned her own life. I looked at the final draft of the letter I had prepared for my mother, a formal, legal document affirming no further contact. It was the last piece of my strategy. It wasn't written in anger or despair, but in the cool, detached voice of Dr. Aylin Long, a professional making a final administrative decision. The document stated, with chilling precision, that any future attempts at connection, financial or emotional, would be deemed harassment and dealt with accordingly. It included no accusation, no emotional language, only facts and the clear delineation of my new boundary. I had chosen peace, and the final document was ready. But what was the family's exact, last-ditch attempt to contact me, and how did my surgical letter ensure that my self-determination and triumph were secured forever? Months had passed in absolute peace. My asset and my marriage were thriving, a testament to my determination. The family dynamics were silent, but I knew the quiet wasn't acceptance, it was regrouping. One evening, my landline rang. A number I didn't recognize, but a strategy one did. I answered, my voice professional, detached. Eleanor's voice was shaky, carefully calibrated for maximum guilt. Aylin? It's your mother. We just miss you, dear. The pain of this silence, it's tearing your father apart. The classic move, weaponize connection. She didn't ask for money, not yet. She went for the emotional soft spot, the lifelong yearning for approval. We saw the pictures of your clinic expansion. You've done well, Aylin. We always knew your skill would lead to success. A subtle attempt to reclaim ownership of my triumph. I didn't interrupt. My internal meter registered the partial apology as an attempt to breach the boundary. My response had to be pure, professional precision. Eleanor, are you calling in an official capacity, or regarding a dental emergency? The cold, formal title, Eleanor, hit her hard. The shift in dynamics was visible even over the phone line. She bristled, her voice regaining its old moral superiority. Don't be ridiculous, Aylin. I am your mother. Have you no integrity? My integrity is confined to my practice and my marriage. Regarding our connection, that ceased when you publicly engaged in gossip and undermined my self-determination. I sent a letter outlining the new boundary. I used cold facts, the language of solvency. She paused, realizing the letter was real. The guilt trip wasn't working. We just thought, for the holidays. Maybe a small gathering? We want to see you. Can't we just find some practicality? The tone shifted from superiority to quiet despair. The practicality is this: our boundary is non-negotiable. Any request for connection must be submitted in writing. As a professional, I must prioritize my peace and my new family. That is the final strategy. I asserted my full, unshakable power. There was a long, hollow silence. I felt no pain or revenge, only the triumph of having successfully performed the emotional surgery. I had used my professional precision to cut out the source of the toxicity. I waited, calmly. You are truly cold, Aylin. Like your work. You always valued your skill more than your own blood. The final, expected judgment. I was ready. I value integrity above all. Goodbye, Eleanor. A clean, definite end. I gently placed the phone back on the cradle. I had used the very insults about my coldness and precision as the instruments of my self-determination. The call was a final test, and I had passed with flawless execution. My boundary was sealed. Ethan walked in, knowing instantly what had happened. He didn't ask, he simply held me. My new connection was one of silent, mutual understanding. The only asset I truly needed was the shared peace and the unwavering support of my chosen tribe. The partial apology was a final, failed bid for control. My triumph was the fact that my professional strategy had become my personal philosophy. Precision, solvency, self-determination. The resolution was complete. The emotional toll of the years, the constant struggle for approval under their heavy judgment, had finally paid off in this moment of quiet power. My determination had won. The silence I created was a sanctuary, built with my own hands and my own asset. The final dynamic was established. They were outside the boundary, looking in at a life they could neither control nor diminish. My integrity shone brighter in the absence of their superiority. My only remaining focus was on the joy of my connection and the growth of my asset. Every day was now an act of self-determination, a quiet, powerful statement. The old cycle of pain and manufactured despair was broken. The story of family revenge had transformed into a story of personal liberation, all thanks to my commitment to precision and practicality. I had won the war, and the line was finally cut. But how did my life, built on precision and self-determination, continue to flourish, and what final, reflective thought did I have about the nature of true power and ultimate triumph? The silence was golden, but then an email arrived. From Chris, my brother, the one sibling who usually stayed silent within the family dynamics. The subject line was simply, "You did the right thing." It was an unexpected moment of connection, a validation of my self-determination. Chris's message was short but carried the power of years of shared pain. He admitted the gossip and moral superiority had been crippling for him too. He praised my surgical precision in handling the situation. He recognized my integrity where my parents only saw a lack of connection. I envy your solvency, Aylin, not the asset itself, but the emotional freedom it bought. You used your skill to create a non-negotiable boundary. Mom's last call was pure despair. She sees your triumph as her loss. His approval was the only one I needed from that side of the family. It wasn't the conditional approval of my parents, it was the clarity of someone who understood my determination. He saw the practicality of my strategy, a necessary act of self-determination to preserve myself. His email didn't open the door for a return to the toxic dynamics. Instead, it established a new kind of connection, one built on the shared judgment of the old system. We agreed to occasional, quiet contact, far away from their radar. This final act of selective connection cemented my triumph. I had the power to choose who was inside my boundary and who was not. My life was no longer about family revenge, but about utilizing my skill and asset to cultivate genuine, healthy connections. My new life was one of chosen connections and absolute solvency. So, what became of my parents' attempts to breach the boundary after the final call, and how did I continue to use my precision and asset to secure my ultimate, quiet triumph? I sit here now, Dr. Aylin Long. Not defined by my family's judgment or my parents' conditional approval, but by my own formidable determination. The identity they tried to diminish, the cold, overly precise dentist, is the foundation of my unwavering power and my success. My greatest asset is no longer the clinic's revenue or my financial solvency, though both thrive. It is my absolute, uncompromised integrity. I chose truth over their toxic dynamics, self-respect over their manufactured connection. That choice was the real revenge. Every piece of pain they inflicted, every insult about my lack of heart or sterility, was used as fuel. The need to prove their judgment wrong drove my determination until it solidified into self-determination. My life is the ultimate triumph against their superiority. My life is an exercise in applied precision and practicality. My marriage is a partnership built on mutual respect, free from the financial or emotional manipulation that defined their lives. We have a clear strategy for growth and peace, not a strategy for drama or gossip. The final call from Eleanor and the subsequent letter from Chris confirmed the strength of my boundary. The line is not just physical, it is a mental and emotional fortress. Their manufactured despair can no longer penetrate this wall built of my own asset and skill. I am a woman who used the tools I was given, my intellect, my career, my determination, to secure my own liberation. Every part of my life, from my diamond to my diploma, is a symbol of my absolute self-determination. I designed this triumph. The toxic dynamics of seeking approval or fearing judgment are over. My life is dedicated to creating value for my patients, my husband, and myself. That is a purpose far more meaningful than trying to please a family that never deserved my connection or my solvency. The biggest shift wasn't external, it was internal. I stopped measuring my worth by their standards of superiority. I realized that true wealth is emotional solvency and the constant presence of peace. My revenge was becoming the person they claimed I already was, emotionally unassailable. I finally embraced the title of the cold, precise one. Because precision means no waste, no error, and absolute control. It means integrity. It means my professional skill always delivers success. That is a definition of a life well lived, regardless of family gossip. This is my new strategy: live perfectly, love deeply, and allow no toxic dynamics to cross the boundary. My story is a lesson in using your supposed flaws, your determination, your practicality, as your greatest asset in securing your total self-determination. The quiet after the storm of the wedding and the final call was the sweetest reward. It confirmed that my precision in cutting the toxic ties was correct. My life now represents the pinnacle of emotional solvency, a triumph built on my own terms. My professional reputation, secured by my flawless skill, only grew. The public approval I received was genuine, earned through consistent integrity, not begged for through family connection. That difference defined my entire new reality. I look at the white stone from the Caribbean, my reminder of the boundary. It is cold, hard, and perfectly smooth. A symbol of my ability to endure judgment and emerge with my integrity intact. I will never again allow external pain to dictate my internal state of peace. The biggest lesson? True power is internal. It is the ability to walk away from manufactured despair and build a better life using nothing but your own determination. Their loss was my liberation. Their superiority was revealed as an empty shell. The final clarity is this: the revenge wasn't the event, it was the existence. It was living a life so undeniably successful, so precise, and so filled with genuine connection that their existence became totally moot. That is the definition of ultimate triumph. I used the family's own language of practicality against them. My actions were the most practical ones I could take, preserving my mental health, my career asset, and my marriage. The strategy was clinical, clean, and perfectly executed. The gossip eventually died down because there was nothing left to feed the dynamics. I had stopped participating. I had achieved the rare and beautiful thing, total emotional independence. Paid for by my own determination and skill. My life is a testament to the power of self-determination. The cold, precise dentist finally found her peace and her triumph. Now, I turn to you. If you could create one unshakable boundary to secure your own integrity and solvency, what would it be? Years passed. The frantic energy of the wedding, the final call, the legal letters, all faded into the backdrop of a solid, ordinary life. Walking in the park with Ethan, I realized peace wasn't the absence of conflict, it was the total lack of internal reaction to the old pain. The toxic family dynamics were truly dead. They no longer held any power over my decisions, my asset, or my emotional solvency. The struggle for their approval felt like a foolish, distant dream. My life, built on precision and practicality, was its own unbreakable loop of success. The ultimate triumph was the preservation of my integrity. I never compromised my truth, even when facing their moral superiority and public gossip. I used my determination and skill not for revenge, but for building a new, honest reality. My self-determination was no longer a rebellious act, it was simply my core operating system. The clarity I gained allowed me to see that their judgment was nothing more than a reflection of their own despair and stagnation. My boundary had given them the clarity, too. My connection with Ethan, and with Chris, was a testament to chosen family. It proved that love and support are built on shared integrity, not shared DNA. My strategy for life became focusing entirely on cultivating these healthy dynamics. Letting go wasn't a sudden event, it was a process of careful, surgical precision. I systematically removed every anchor that tied me to their ship of pain. The power of that letting go was immense. It freed up emotional space for genuine peace to take root. My professional asset continued to flourish, not as a point of revenge, but as a source of deep personal fulfillment. It was a tangible reminder that my determination and skill were more than enough. My wealth bought me immunity from emotional blackmail. I never looked back. That was my final strategy. The moment you stop checking if the past is chasing you, you truly claim your future. My forward focus on practicality, ethical success, and peace ensured their irrelevance. I even let go of the last vestiges of anger. Anger requires a connection, and I had severed the line with such precision that there was nothing left to be angry at, just a vacant lot where a toxic family once stood. This was the final, profound clarity. Their need for me to seek their approval and my former fear of their judgment were equally hollow. I realized that my own inner judgment, my commitment to high integrity, was the only moral compass I ever needed. That was the purest form of self-determination. My life now is not a reaction to the past, but an intentional creation of the future. Every morning is a clean slate, financed by my solvency and defined by my determination. The past is a simple chapter, titled, "The Crucible That Forged My Power." The moral superiority they flaunted was nothing more than a disguise for their professional despair. My refusal to engage in their dynamics gave me the ultimate moral high ground. My silence and my success were the only sermons I ever needed to preach. The whole story, from the wedding triumph to the final letter, was a declaration. A declaration that an individual's integrity is more valuable than any forced family connection. That lesson is my legacy, secured by my asset and my unwavering self-determination. My advice to anyone facing toxic family gossip or judgment is simple: use your skill and determination to build an impenetrable boundary. Let your practicality be your shield and your solvency be your sword. Your peace is the only victory that truly lasts. The sun sets over the Nashville skyline. It's a clean view, uncluttered by the shadows of the past. My triumph is complete, rooted in the present, defined by peace and self-determination. The cold, precise dentist finally found her warmth. My life is a testament to the power of self-determination and peace. What specific step will you take today to build your own boundary and secure your emotional solvency? The silence from the past isn't just quiet, it's fertile ground. My determination and my precision are now channeled into a new beginning, creation. Ethan and I are expecting a baby. This is the ultimate declaration of my new self-determination, a future built entirely on peace and choice. My focus shifts from building my financial asset to building my legacy. A legacy of integrity, emotional solvency, and respect. This child will never experience the toxic dynamics of seeking conditional approval or fearing undeserved judgment. The concept of revenge is utterly foreign now. True triumph is realizing that the past doesn't define the future. I used my pain to find my power, but now the power is used for quiet creation. Not dramatic counterattacks against their moral superiority. Our life is defined by conscious practicality. We apply the same precision to our emotional connection as I do to a complex surgical procedure. We set clear boundaries and operate with transparency. This strategy ensures sustainable peace. My professional asset is the secure, financial bedrock of this new life. It guarantees that no outside dynamics, particularly those related to family, can ever use money as leverage again. My skill bought my family freedom from emotional despair. The clarity I earned through my struggle is the most valuable gift. I know exactly who I am and what I stand for. The cold, precise persona that was criticized is the very strategy that saved my life and secured my success. The cycle is broken. I replaced the inherited family dynamics of criticism and manipulation with the chosen dynamics of unconditional connection and peace. This is the full and final meaning of my triumph. True power is quiet. It doesn't need to assert itself or engage in gossip, it simply exists. My self-determination is so absolute that their existence is no longer even a consideration. I have achieved the highest form of emotional solvency. I learned that a boundary isn't a wall meant to keep people out. It's a frame that defines where your integrity begins and ends. It protects your inner peace so that you can use your skill and determination to create a meaningful life. The feeling of peace is the greatest luxury my hard work and precision bought. It is the freedom from constant emotional debt, the ultimate sign of my financial and emotional solvency. This peace is the most potent counterstrike against the history of pain. Every day, I practice gratitude for my chosen connection with Ethan. He is the partner who celebrates my determination and my asset, not the one who views them with suspicion or judgment. That genuine approval is everything. My life is proof that you can architect your own life, even when the foundational dynamics were toxic. You can rise above inherited despair and build a future based on deliberate practicality and unwavering integrity. The child will be born into a home of clarity, where love is unconditional and the boundary is sacred. The story of family revenge ends here, not with a bang, but with the quiet, powerful act of creation. I leave the past to the past, where the gossip and the superiority can fade into irrelevance. My final act is not of detachment, but of full attachment to the present and the future I actively built with my hands and my skill. My ultimate strategy was simple: change the narrative. Instead of the victim seeking approval, I became the architect of my own power. My triumph is the quiet, daily joy of living a life of my design. The cold, precise dentist finally secured her triumph and built her legacy. What is the next chapter you are actively writing for your own life, now that you've claimed your self-determination and peace? My journey, from seeking my family's approval to achieving total self-determination, was built on one thing: clarity. I stopped letting their judgment dictate my worth. Now, looking at you, I want to share the 5 most precise lessons my family revenge story taught me. Lesson 1: Your integrity is your greatest asset. Never compromise your moral compass for toxic connection. Lesson 2: The boundary is the strategy. A clear, non-negotiable boundary is the most practical defense against unhealthy family dynamics. Lesson 3: Emotional solvency is true power. The moment you stop needing their approval or fearing their judgment, you achieve complete emotional freedom. That solvency is the only power you need to claim your triumph. Lesson 4: Your skill is your shield. Use your professional skill and determination to create an asset that makes you untouchable by financial or emotional despair. Lesson 5: Peace is the ultimate revenge. True triumph is a life so saturated with peace and genuine connection that their existence, their gossip, their moral superiority, simply fades into irrelevance. That is the legacy of self-determination I built. This story isn't about them, it's about you finding your way out. Don't seek revenge, seek solvency. If my story resonated, hit like and subscribe. What is the one toxic family dynamic you are finally ready to end today? Share your strategy in the comments below. Let's start a new chapter of self-determination together. What is the one toxic family dynamic you are finally ready to end today? Share your strategy in the comments below. Let's start a new chapter of self-determination together.